that exposed my family as being dark occult, I would automatically, instantaneously go right into denial and throw that thought right out the window and pretend that we were a Norman Rockwell family. And you have to understand, folks, if you read books like Tavistock Institute for Human Relations by Dr. John Coleman, trillions of dollars are being spent by governments and corporate institutions through the media to steer your consciousness into a place where you make an excellent victim, where you are disempowered. I personally like the fact that I'm on the center path, that I know truth exists, and I'm going to find out all of it. I don't sit and gargle with sewage all the time. My life is not spent rolling around in the conspiratorium of Agenda 21 electronics. I spend most of my time in the positive areas of human growth, philosophy like the trivium and things like that.
Excellent. Jay, we're going to pick this up on the other side, and we'll take your calls after this quick break. No worries.
We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. We're going to go to your phone calls for any questions that you have for Jay Parker or myself. And before we do that, real quick, I want to let people know that Jay is also a radio show host. He does a show every Sunday evening on Blog Talk Radio. It's his show is called SRA Today, and you could find his show and his archives at blogtalkradio.com/Type 1 Radio Ashram. I'll spell that for you. It's Type 1, TYPE, the number 1, Radio Ashram. Ashram is ASHRAM, Type 1 Radio Ashram. So you could check out Jay's show, SRA Today. And Jay, you say that does not stand for satanic ritual abuse. You've had some other colorful acronyms for what that means, right?
Well, it actually... I picked that SRA for satanic ritual abuse, but when I did the first show, I did a bunch of different things for it.
Okay. So people can
can't think of them right now.
No worries. People can check that out. And Jay's done, I think, probably about 8 or 9 shows so far to date, and you can check him out every Sunday. So, with that said, let's go to some calls. What do you think? Take some calls?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to Jack in Illinois. You're live on What on Earth is Happening with our special guest, Jay Parker. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Jay.
Hey, how are you,
Mark?
Jack?
I don't know if you remember me, but we've spoken in the past about a year and a half ago about maybe working together. But I just want to applaud both of you, but in particular to you, Mark. I've been reviewing some of your previous work and getting up to speed on some of your more recent work, and it's just absolutely so spot on. It's absolutely splendid, and I'm just trying to pass the word to as many people as I can to get them to watch a lot of your videos. So thank you so much for the work that both of you do.
Absolutely. I appreciate that so much. And like I said, it's all about getting active, getting involved, and putting the truth out there for other people. And that's why it's so great that Jay has also taken up that banner, and he's doing his own radio show. And let me tell you something. His show is a smorgasbord of information. You want to tune in and get in-depth information sourced by many, many articles from all over, from a very eclectic variety of sources. You want to tune into his show on Sunday evening. So thanks so much, Jack. Did you have anything else?
Yes.
Sure.
I just have one, I guess, comment and then one question for both of you. The comment more is for you, Mark. In watching a lot of your presentations, I can hear the, I guess, frustration in your voice about the lack of the number of people that are awakening. And I guess my comment on that would be, isn't the reality of the situation that it's a wonder that anybody wakes up, given the fact it's against all odds?
Yeah,
how we're assaulted on every front.
I've often said to people,
your comments?
Yeah, let me just cut in there for one moment. I've often said to people, it is a tragedy that it only took me 30 years of my life to wake up, and it's a miracle that it only took me 30 years of my life to wake up. That's my comment on your comment. So go ahead with your next part. Yes. Okay.
This next question is for both of you regarding the dark occultist. As it relates to animals, I've listened to your presentations, Mark, about carnism, and that's one aspect of it.
Sure.
But what is there a plan that the dark occultists actually implement regarding animals and how the slaughter and mass murder of, let's say, for example, the many animals that are hunted, that are promoted, and actually which sponsors the Department of Natural Resources, the DNR, like deer hunting, and all these other types of things that traumatize animals other than farm factories, such as rodeos, such as circuses, all the lab animals that are absolutely tortured, and right down the line. Is there an actual plan in place by the dark occultists so that affects the energy level in a negative fashion, etc.?
Jack, thank you so much for that question. That's a great question, and thank you for your call. I'm going to let Jay field that question. Jay, what do you have to say about the dark occult's agenda toward animals? And if I'm not mistaken, you also, as I am, are a vegetarian. Is that not correct? So you try to, as much as possible, step back from the harm of our fellow beings here on this planet from the animal kingdom.
I do take care of myself by eating organic. Occasionally I'll eat meat, but very, very rare. My main thing with staying away from meat is the law of correspondence. Also, I personally think that animals have some form of consciousness that I do not understand, and do I really have a right to take their life? But the biggest thing that keeps me away from carnism is the fact that when you research what the factory farms are doing to these animals, you won't want to be part of that system. And it just comes down to the understanding when you think of the dark occult and the treatment of animals and the law of correspondence. Ask yourself, why is the UN on a former slaughterhouse on the East River? When animals are killed in such a inhumane way over millions of animals, and one of the biggest slaughterhouses in New York was situated and owned by the Rockefellers, and they built a UN right on that property. That property is literally soaked in blood and soaked in the morphogenic field of death. And I just want to say that when you talk about the dark occult, their understanding of the morphogenic field, and Rupert Sheldrake's work on this, is something everyone needs to understand. Sheldrake and Lipton are two people you've got to understand their work. You have to understand some of the work done by Kevin Trudeau, especially when he talks about the fact that the additives in foods are nothing but drugs. Some dangerous stuff out there. But when you start to study how they manipulate the energy field, then you can look at, well, how can I manipulate the energy field in the other direction? How can I be a light worker as opposed to a demonic possessed robot? And I make orgonite. And orgonite is something that you can research. You should have Organite in your home and on your person at all times. The EMF pollution that's out there is extremely dangerous and not beneficial to your cell walls and the activities of your receptors and your we don't really know what the long-term effects of the EMF electromagnetic pollution on the cell wall is, but the doctors that have posted EMF pollution on YouTube, the few that honest doctors that I've heard give talks on this, totally terrifying. That's why I make and promote Organite. And I do a lot of things in my life to help people, grow and understand and stay safe. That's why I speak out against fluoride. I speak out against eating conventional food that has pesticide. One person did a analysis of a head of broccoli and found 33 different chemicals in that head of broccoli: fungicide, pesticide, herbicide. Now, I want you to get this cognitive dissonance concept in your mind. Farms have to, by law, post warning signs if they use herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides because of the damage that was caused to farm workers. Back in the 60s and 70s, everybody knew that these chemicals being sprayed on the plants were causing genetic damage to human beings, and it wasn't healthy. Now, magically, those same plants come out of those fields with those warning signs that say danger, chemical pesticides, get shipped to your supermarket, and magically, a magic happens, and they're healthy, and it's good to eat those
sudden
chemicals.
Transformation. What was poisonous is no longer poisonous anymore. Yeah. See, what this all comes down to, Jay, is that this is all about the manipulation of energy. That's how they're manipulating human beings, whether it's by injecting poisons and chemicals into the food supply or affecting the morphic field of energy that we all live in through the slaughterhouse factory farm system. It all comes down to that's affecting the consciousness of people, because that energy field is what we live in and we resonate in that field. It's an inescapable conclusion. We are bioelectrical beings. We are living in an energy field. If you poison that energy field, it would be the equivalent of poisoning the water in a tank of fish. It's going to affect all the fish if the water is poisoned. It's the same thing with us. We are living in a sea of energy, and while people may not be able to directly perceive that etheric energy field is directly affecting the mind. It's not just affecting the body, it's affecting the way we think too. And again, the way we think is going to directly influence behavior, and then that's going to directly influence the manifested conditions on the earth, which is how they do this. That's how the mind control works, and that's how they keep it propagated. Let's take another call. Let's go to Fred in California. You're live on What on Earth is Happening with our special guest, Jay Parker. Welcome, Fred.
For taking my call. I'm disabled and in bed most of the time. And starting in 2001, when the second tower dropped, I stopped reading novels and went to history. And it took me to places I had not dreamed of. I agree with probably a lot of what Mr. Parker, what you're saying tonight. And I would consider myself a researcher, and I really commend you for the time and the energy that you put in, along with all the talk show hosts on this network. It's a lot of work, and I've come to a point where it's very easy to become what I call a reader-repeater, and to get stuck into things and to keep an open mind. I've noticed that, you use the word truth many times, and that you've been on this journey for 30 years. You can only imagine a family where both parents are working and have kids, how much time they have, how much energy they have left at the end of the day to do the type of research that we're all doing here and trying to help our fellow man. The question I have for you is factually, what is truth? Because you use it a lot. And that's my question to you tonight.
Yes, I actually did a interview with Richard Grove from TragedyandHope.com, and he led the entire show that I did. You could find this on the news section of my website. He led the entire show with this question directed to me. So I'll field this, and then I'll let Jay, speak on whether he concurs with my working definition for that term. To me, truth is that which is. It is that which has occurred in the past and is occurring in the present. And it is nothing more nor less than that. We have to demystify this concept. People want to overthink it. They want to mystify it. And they want to complicate it into something that it is not. They want to try to get it. What is the mind of God? What is the purpose for all existence? What is happening in other dimensions? I try to stray from making it about all of that. We have to simplify and demystify this concept, okay? And understand that we're talking about events which have occurred and which are occurring now. The reality of the situation that we are actually in is what the truth is. The things that are taking place within us and around us. That's the truth. The truth is simply that which has occurred in the past and is occurring in the present moment. Jay, I'll let you give your take on that.
Basically, my viewpoint of truth is something that's based on actual research, a clear understanding, and not tied to a belief system.
Jay, I'll let you pick up that on the other side of the break. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My special guest tonight is Jay Parker. Jay, before the break, the caller had asked you about your view of truth, and you were talking about what it is to pursue truth. So you can pick it up from right there.
Well, for me, having gone through the mind control of hard trauma, being electroshocked, raped, tortured for the first 7 years of my life, and then manifesting a life where I basically obeyed the programming that my parents gave me, this slave programming. And for instance, in my business life, basically if someone recognized me as a Illuminati slave, they could use a simple Illuminati hand signal, and I would basically work for pennies on the dollar. Not a very fun place to be. But my pursuit of truth, once I woke up, has led me into a myriad of studies. But it's all based on a simple premise that I understand the Illuminati system in the world that we live under today. And if I can say this one truth to you, and you can hold this in your mind, I want you to understand the paradigm you're in. And that truth is, let the buyer beware. If you are ignorant of reality when it comes to aspartame, fluoride, the cancer industry, cannabis, whatever, okay, GMO food, if you're ignorant, these corporations and these Illuminati dark occultists, okay, their understanding is it's not our fault you're stupid enough to ingest that. It's not our fault you're ignorant enough to believe that. It's not our fault that you don't read books and study reality and study your own physiology and study your own psychology. That's you. You're doing that. You've been brought up in a culture of ignorance and a culture that tells you that you're nothing, that you have no power. And I'm here to tell you that you are the ultimate power because you broadcast into the field. And the biggest thing the Illuminati is afraid of is people waking up and broadcasting freedom and broadcasting self-determination and self-responsibility.
That's right. Sovereignty. Absolutely.
Because we're dealing with collectivism. We're dealing with the state wanting to take over all aspects of human life.
That's exactly right. It's all about the deep understanding of our own individual sovereignty and then respecting that sovereignty in all others. Let's take another call. Let's go to Rob in Ecuador, Peru. I'm sorry, in Ecuador. Rob in Ecuador. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, Rob.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Jay. Yeah, a bit of a comment, bit of a question. I think anyone who's got the courage to become awake realizes that we're dealing with ultimately a dark satanic force. Right now in the UK, there's a gentleman called Robert Green who was investigating child abuse. He was abducted out of the UK, taken to Scotland by police. Then they tried to section him. Now he's incarcerated just for investigating child abuse. And of course, they took all his computer records and all his evidence as they went, because it goes right to the very heart and the highest levels of society. I'm sure you've heard the name Jimmy Savile in recent months, and I know it's hundreds of thousands that go missing, or a couple of 100,000 of kids go missing in the US, and a few tens of thousands in the UK.
Rob, stay with us. Jay's going to give you his take on this on the other side, but stay with us until the other side of the break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening. Welcome back, everyone. This is the last hour of tonight's edition of What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. My special guest tonight, Jay Parker. And Jay, we were fielding a question from Rob in Ecuador regarding pedophilia in the highest institutions of government. Rob, if you're still there, if you want to finish up your question, and then I'll let Jay field that.
Yeah. Well, the child abuse pedophilia thing, I'm sure you've all heard. There's numerous people been called out in the BBC and Jimmy Savile recently, and it's just this is merely one part of the burden that those of us who feel we're slightly awake here, we have to look at this stuff, and this is just one of the intricate web of the negativity that's being foisted on humankind. My question is, and you've begun to address it really, is we understand how powerful the mind is, how one needs to be in a positive state to create better health, to be creative, to be able to shape our own futures. We have to, as you say, not gargle in the sewage, and because fear is, as we start to wake up, of course, we're facing scary stuff, and the first reaction is to just end up completely consumed by fear. And it's certainly something I've been through. I think most of society has been so traumatized, and not in the same way, of course, that Jay's been through, but just by all of the mind controls that you discuss, Mark.
Sure.
Most of them just have no interest in waking up whatsoever. They don't even. It's almost like the frog in the frog in the pan of water being slowly heated up. They don't seem to have the ability to even face it, and yet when we do, we almost need to support each other or come forward with techniques, and you've mentioned one, I think, emotional freedom technique, to help those that are coming awake to deal with what they're finding. So
Yes.
my question really is around how do we, can we actually be in against such overwhelming odds? Is it possible to live a happy, healthy life whilst having to look at some of this sewage that we're waking up to?
Well,
I guess
it's
that's the question.
amazing that you, during the break, Mark and I were talking, of course, and I said to Mark, I've never been happier than I am right now, having reality as the basis of my existence rather than someone's mind control. And true that there's ugly subjects like the pedophilia. Pedophilia is a satanic or Illuminati sacrament. And if you wish to get in with the in crowd of these archonic energies, these off-world, other dimensional energies that motivate these dark occultists, that take over their minds. I've seen my parents literally change into other beings right in front of me on a vibrational, spiritual level. And it's this other satanic, demonic force. I call it archonic, due to the work of the Gnostics, and I believe that they have an understanding of what we're going through as a species better than most. I just want to say, when I talked to an old friend of mine recently, and I've been turning him on to Kevin Trudeau and Bruce Lipton's lectures, and he's a very busy man. He has a small business. He has 3 kids. He hardly has any time to himself. But I said to him, just listen and read as much as you can every day and get away from the television. The television has tons of subliminal programming going on. When you watch TV, you are put into a mild hypnotic state. David Icke and other researchers have talked about this. Alex Jones has talked about this. The TV is absolutely doing mind control on you on a subliminal level. So get away from it, open a book, start doing nutritional research. Yep. One of the first things that made me happiest was when I started eating right, when I started not poisoning my body with the processed food out there and really paying attention to the water I drank. I got a fluoride filter. I don't drink fluoridated water. Really, there's things you can do to change how you feel. And one of the best things is, of course, eating properly, not eating the mass-produced poison. But 800,000 children disappear in America every year, according to the Center for Exploited and Missing Children. This is one of the largest organizations of missing and exploited children in America. And they report 800,000 children disappear every year. Well, I know that a lot of those children are ending up in pedophile slave rings. I know, experientially, a lot of those children are ending up in human sacrifice rituals done for the twisting of monarch mind control slaves. And Kathy O'Brien talks about this stuff too. And all I have to say is, I had an old girlfriend that when she broke up with me, she said to me, I just don't want the Illuminati in my life. So she went back to sleep. She went back to La La Land.
As if ignoring reality can make that happen. As if ignoring reality will somehow change the external situation in our lives. And that's that cognitive dissonance we've been talking about the whole show, that people believe they're the arbiters of truth. I can just flick my attention one way or another, and that changes reality. It's not about actually taking action to make things different in the world. I want to speak to the dynamic of happiness for a moment, because I totally agree with Jay. Although I have become aware of what the world really is, and I tell people, hey, you want to know what the world really is? In one word, the world is a farm. The world's not just a prison, it's a farm where we're farmed for energy. Human beings are an energy source. As dark of an understanding as that is, coming online to understanding about the slavery system here on Earth, nothing could have possibly made me happier in a cosmic sense. See, there's a distinction here that we're talking about, Rob. I believe Robert was the caller's name. The distinction that we're talking about here is the difference between individual happiness based on personal desire versus true cosmic happiness based on doing the great work of propagating the truth and therefore alleviating suffering. So I'm cosmically happy. Am I happy about the situation? No. Am I happy that I, knowing what I know, have the responsibility to have to do this work and to sacrifice my time and energy in the way that I know that I must do it because I have a moral obligation to propagate the truth, knowing what I know? No, I'm not happy about that. I would rather that not be the case. But the happiness that Jay's referring to here, the peace that you can find, is through knowing the truth and knowing that you're doing the great work to actually bring that truth to other people to make this world a better place to live in, not only for ourselves but those who come after us. So I hope that answers your question, and I thank you for your call. Let's go to Diane in Nebraska. Actually, let's hold that and we'll pick up with Diane in Nebraska on the other side of this break. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to What on Earth is Happening here on Republic Broadcasting. We'll be right back.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down.
Welcome back,
Sooner or
everyone.
later, gotta.
This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. I'm here with my special guest for this evening, Jay Parker. We're taking your calls. Let's go to Diane from Nebraska. Welcome to What on Earth is Happening, Diane.
Well, thank you both, gentlemen, for being here and talking with us all tonight. Appreciate your work. Mark, I just discovered your work a couple weeks ago, and I saw your piece on the cosmic abandonment, and it just blew the lid off of everything I've been questioning for years in my consciousness. And my question for both of you, since I've just recently reached that point where I saw not only the awareness of what's really going on, but how evil it is and how deep it runs, and made that first realization, okay, everything I've known about life up to this point has been shattered. And I was wondering what techniques or how you both dealt with it when you were at that stage where you first realized, whoa, everything is not as it seems.
Sure, I'll speak to that first, and then I'll let Jay pick that up.
Okay, thank you.
The thing when I understood what the world really was, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to tell that to as many other people as possible in the effort to help them to understand what I had come to understand. So my only motivation was immediately my mind switched to knowing this. Just me knowing this obviously isn't enough. Other people apparently, very obviously, do not know what I know, and therefore I have an obligation to communicate that to other people. That's what actually took the pressure off of doing that. But see, I at first in that process was almost kind of afraid to do that because it was like, do I really have the big picture right? Am I really accurate? And a person helped snap me out of that waiting process. I wanted to do it, but I didn't immediately act on that. Okay, and it was a mistake not to immediately act on that. It was a mistake not to start immediately communicating to that. It took somebody basically kicking me in the rear end and telling me that I was one of the most knowledgeable people that they had come across, but I was still remaining inactive. And in so doing that, I was not actually fulfilling a responsibility that I have as a knowledgeable person to communicate that knowledge to other people. So when this person very unapologetically and almost brutally honestly said that to me, it kind of snapped me out of that waiting process, that holding process that I was in. And then I finally came fully online and said, you know what, I have to take this immediately into the realm of action and start doing what I know was the right thing to do, which was start talking to everybody around me and everybody in as wide of a sense, meaning on the internet, as I possibly could. So that's what helped me to deal and mitigate with that initial shock process of really understanding the big picture. Jay, your process as far as that was concerned?
Well, of course, waking up from satanic ritual abuse, the first thing I felt was rage that my life had been stolen from me and that my entire, family history was a complete fraud. And very angry at my brothers and my parents.
And how did you deal with that anger? What did you do to mitigate that
very
anger?
Simply, I was angry enough not to go ballistic and start screaming at people and this and that about what I knew.
Or worse.
No, basically, I was angry enough that I said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
Right.
The bottom of all of this. And that's what my last 14 years has been. And the reason I'm doing SRA Today, the radio show, is to warn people about aspartame, the cancer fraud, all of it. I talk about a lot of negative things, but I also talk positive things.
See, in that negativity that you're bringing forward, you're providing a defensive shield. That knowledge is what is actually allowing people to empower themselves and defend themselves against these attacks. So that's what people have to understand. When we talk about these negative things, it's not to shut people down and keep them in fear. It's to say, here's what you're dealing with. This is what you're up against. This is what you have to be aware of if you want to protect yourself and then ultimately thrive in this environment where we're besieged on all sides by different poisons and fields of energy and lies and deception. So that process of actually telling people and warning them about that is actually an extremely positive process. One other thing I really want to briefly comment on, Jay, before you continue, is your anger. That's also a positive thing because that motivated you to learn the truth and then start communicating the truth to other people. See, this is what the New Age movement has all wrong. It's not about not looking at the negative and never getting angry. It's about understanding what is, regardless of how dark it is, and initially getting angry about that. Now, you can't stay in that anger and let it fester and let it eat you alive. You have to use that anger as a motivating force to do something with that knowledge that you now possess. And that is what the positive usage of that emotion is. So, Jay, you could pick it up from there.
I really feel for you because when the veil drops and you look at our society for what it truly is, it's a real punch in the gut. It's just like reading Tavistock Institute by John Coleman. That'll make you feel like crap for a couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing I can recommend to someone who's just waking up is, get one of David Icke's books that are about 700 pages long, and you can see a complete overview of the economic, political, and social history of the human race. Icke writes really good books about like that. But one of the best things that I found, and this is what Mark was touching on, that as you grow in knowledge and wisdom and protect yourself and try to protect the people that you love around you, tell them you don't have to take vaccines because you can get a waiver. Vaccines are very dangerous. I mean, I have done the research, okay? I ran into a PhD woman at the train station the other day, and I got in an argument with her. She said vaccines don't cause autism. And I just shot back with her. The CDC recently had to admit that they were suppressing for 30 years research that shows vaccines cause autism.
They actually admitted that?
Yes. A doctor in England got a Freedom of Information request finally through after 10 years. And it shows that the CDC has known for 30 years through, there's like 24 studies, that autism and vaccines go together. Now, you can Google CDC suppresses 30 years of vaccine research, and you probably get the article. It was on my show not too long ago. But the thing is, if you take the same amount of drugs into your body at a 180-pound adult that is given to a baby during a vaccination, you would have to take 30 injections to have the same amount per body weight, okay, per mass, that infant is getting. Now think to yourself, 30 shots of mercury-laced squalene and adjuvants? Do you think you would live from that?
I am the world.
Welcome back, everyone. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. We're taking your calls. The call-in number to join us, 800-313-9443. Let's go to Robert in Missouri with our special guest, Jay Parker. Robert, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hey, greetings, guys. Great conversation, great program, just all the topics covered. You know, I noticed in this, I listen to a lot of underground talk, you know, various networks, various hosts, and so many people are half in, half out. They're unwilling. They get themselves, you know, what they think is awake, and then they, due to their own preconceived programming, they're unwilling to come out further.
Right.
And let me give you for instance, so many people in this, you know, alternative media movement, they still get this hero worship of the military.
Right.
I'm a Marine. I'm honorably discharged. I got out long ago. But we still have this thing to where joining the Marine Corps, the Army, whatever, going off and doing the bidding of the psychopath, we still want to give these guys a pat on the back rather than give them the truth in their face.
Right.
And it's getting, you know, to the point where it's like, look, the whole world is aflame with conflict, and we've got to get to this point where we say, look, I'm not going to pick up a rifle for you goons anymore. And, you know, this system, you know, Homeland Security, why would you pick up a weapon and put on a Homeland Security uniform? I just can't get it.
Obviously, due to lack of self-respect, you know, and a feeling of disempowerment in their own lives, then resulting subconsciously in them craving power over others. I mean, that's really the psychological dynamic that's going on with a person like that. Of course, they're not aware of that at a conscious level, but at a subconscious level, that's what's operating. But I totally agree with you, Robert, that we need to be in the face of people like this, telling them that they're not moral, they're not heroes, they're doing something that's actually immoral, and always have been. It always has been like that, and they're just being used by these psychopathic financial elitists to, basically confiscate the resources of other nations and other peoples at their behest. Jay, your take on this?
900 military bases throughout the world does not mean peace and freedom. It means corporate hegemony over the world. And our military has been viciously and maliciously used by the international bankers, I guess over 100 years now, because World War I was just so blatant as far as an Illuminati conflict. But of course, you look at the economics of imperialism is what's driving most of this. And, Spanish-American War. We did a false flag with the blowing up of the Maine and declared war and took a bunch of things from the Spanish Empire and became an empire ourselves. And we haven't looked back since.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've been really trying to look into this thing we call conscienceless, no conscience, psychopathy.
Right. Yes.
And it's, I've been reading some like esoteric works and, Pike, all the secret societies stemming from, a lot of the secret society stuff stemming from Kabbalah. And, I've been getting into some Talmud, and it's just like, when you consider you and your clique as the only people that are truly human, and the other, 6 point whatever billion people on the planet as inhuman, this is a perfect breeding ground for psychopathy.
Sure.
To where the skull and bones guys up there at Yale. Yep. Everybody that's not a bonesman is called a Gentile.
Right.
At Freemasonry, everybody outside the lodge is called the profane.
Right.
This mindset has infected so many institutions and so many organizations where it's us within, we're the gods. Everybody outside, you're nothing, and we'll do with you as we please. Whether it's poison you, shoot you up with vaccines, we're going to put a chip in your head, we'll upgrade you. Well, that's the story we're going to give you, but it's probably a downgrade.
Right.
And, all these things that we can experiment on the rest of humanity, because guess what? We'll rationalize it on our own minds that, no, they're not humans. They're just animals to be disposed of and used as we please. And that's the perfect breeding ground for nut job psychos. And people are unwilling to, get into this and say, hey, look, I'm not a hater by any means of your ethnicity, your tribe, or whatever. But when you look at me as less than a human, then we got a problem, buddy.
Sure. And this speaks to the dynamic of the consciousness of separation. And it doesn't make a difference what group it is. It could be the dark occult. It could be Satanists. It could be Zionists. It could be any particular religious extremist group.
Don't forget the Jesuits.
Of course, it's the whole idea that there is a group of people that if you're inside that group, then you are better and elevated than other people. And I talk about that there's only one. All of that's illusion. We're all in the same situation together. I talk about, and as I brought up last week and will continue to discuss, there is one true divide that does separate people. And it's not an illusion. And that is whether they believe in the concept that certain people are an authority over other people. That is the thing that actually does truly differentiate the level of consciousness of one group of people over another group. And that's what this whole Great Awakening process is about. That's what this whole great work to awaken humanity is about, to get them to understand there is nobody over anybody else. There is no authority. The only authority is the law of morality, the laws of morality that the creator of the universe put into effect in this entire reality. That is the authority in this domain of existence that we call the physical world. And nobody is that. Nobody is higher than God. You could just say it outright like that. And that's what these people want to think that they are. This is about the dynamic that's happening on the earth is about man thinking that he's God. Man is not God. Man did not create the universe and put the laws of nature into effect. That was done by the creator of the universe, and we're bound by those laws. And if we flagrantly disregard them, we're going to live inside of a prison for as long as it takes for us to understand that we were wrong and then start looking at the laws of morality and living in harmony with them. Jay, your take on that?
Oh, well, I agree 100% with what you just said. I am very fearful about what's could happen in the next 5-10 years in America if everything should go badly for freedom and truth. But I also have another part of me that thinks that I have more faith in the human race and less faith in the people that are pulling the strings in the media. I think the common man, when push comes to shove, I think we might be okay.
So, Robert, thanks so much for your call. Let's move on to Andrew in California. You're live on What on Earth is Happening with our special guest, Jay Parker. Welcome.
Thank you for all of your work. I'd like to say I enjoyed the Cosmic Abandonment
Thank you.
YouTube thing. It was very awesome. With the occult knowledge becoming more and more increasingly available through the internet and things like YouTube documentaries, learning this stuff can kind of sometimes feel like a bottomless pit, especially for naive kids coming out of the brainwash education system,
right.
Realizing we didn't really learn anything with any actual true value like I did. I've seen friends lose touch with reality, and I know I've even felt delusional in the recent past that sometimes the dark side is seductive, and how do we know we're aligning ourselves with the truth? With all these different paths of learning now available, how can we truly know we are doing the right thing, as it can be confusing at times? Is there only one supreme understanding, and is lie the polar opposite of truth? And for Mark, what are your feelings on someone like Marilyn Manson?
Okay, we'll pick that up on the other side. I'll let Jay speak to the answer to that question on the other side of the break, and then I'll give you my take on Manson. So stay with us.
Out of
There it is, our house in New Orleans. They call the rising sun.
Very appropriate intro music for this last segment of What on Earth is Happening this evening. Here with my special guest, Jay Parker. And we had a call from Andrew from California. I want to thank you, Andrew, for your call. How does one really know that they are actually on the path to truth? Jay, you want to take that one?
I personally, in my studies, got back into classical philosophy, looking at what existed in the Western world and the Eastern world, several thousand years ago, especially looking at what Mark deems to be natural law, looking at the trivium, natural law, using EFT personally, and writing down traumatic experiences and feelings, reoccurring ideas in my mind, and tapping on them with EFT and reprogramming my subconscious, and using EFT also to bring things out of my subconscious that I needed to work on. And that's, I believe, one of the problems with the human race right now is that we're taught in a psychologically negative system, and we need to reprogram our subconscious to give ourselves a break. I want to tell everyone out there that's on the path to being a freedom activist or a truth shower that you don't have to be God. You don't have to be a Messiah. All you have to do is speak the truth in love when it's appropriate.
That's it. It's very simple.
And it's a simple walk.
Yep.
And it's not stressful. The universe isn't asking you to be Atlas and hold the world up. What you really want is a center of knowledge in your heart to where you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I know what it means to be human. I know right from wrong.
That's it. That's what it's ultimately all about, to answer Andrew's question. You have to know the difference between right and wrong. You have to know what actions cause harm and which actions do not cause harm. You have to know what you have a right to own and what you don't have a right to own or try to take away from someone else. And ultimately, that's all about understanding natural law. I highly recommend you, Andrew, to check out my natural law seminar on my website in the videos section. It's a 3-part video constituting about eight hours worth of work. You'd probably get a lot of value out of that. Because it is ultimately about conscience. The path to truth is, and knowing that you're on it, is when you are doing no harm and you are helping to alleviate suffering for other people. So that's my answer to that as well. And to answer your question briefly about Marilyn Manson, Manson was a LaVeyan-styled Satanist, and he was a priest in the Church of Satan. He actually held the rank of priest, the same degree that I held within the Church of Satan when I was involved with it many years ago. And I do think he ideologically grasps and understands the tenets, the ideological tenets of Satanism. I don't think that LaVey himself would have appointed him as a priest in the church if he didn't. So that mindset is very, very poisonous. And I would personally suggest that he's definitely one of the people who is working toward the goal of pure selfishness and hasn't woken up and understood what's really going on here in this world, if that is indeed still his ideology. I don't know what his ideology is now in the present day. I'm talking about many years ago, at least, when he was appointed priest in LaVey's Church of Satan years ago. So maybe he's changed from that ideology, but that's generally my take on him. He is an ideological Satanist, or at least he was in the past. Again, for what he is doing now, I can't speak to that because I don't really follow what he does. So that's my take on him to answer that part of your question. Let's go to another caller. Let's hear from Ray in Oregon. Ray, you're live on What on Earth is Happening with my special guest, Jay Parker. Welcome.
Hello. Can I give you my take on what truth is?
Sure, absolutely. Let's hear it.
Truth is a vibration. It's a holistic, a non-dualistic, unconflicted energy that everyone has within them. The thought of truth is merely a concept based on the intellect, which is satanically controlled. It is based in duality, therefore it's divisive in nature and opposing in all things, which one is conflicted within, and they project it without, and create the world that they live in. Now, truth is found in the subconscious mind, which is infinite, without boundaries. The subconscious mind is God itself. Now, one who is resonating within truth is actually in tune with the subconscious mind, which is Christ consciousness. if one lives in their satanically ruled intellect, they are under the influence of satanic mind control, and that includes every civilized human being that has ever lived. Now, the purpose of life is to transcend that dualistic level of conflict and merge with the subconscious mind, which is possible. It's not recognized by the conscious mind. It will resist it with everything it has and try and destroy it, but it can't, because truth is what is. It has always been. It is what is now, and it shall always be. Now, that's the nature of the conflict that's going on in the world. And it's very simple. One must die to be reborn as a spirit of divine intelligence. And that is the transcendence from the dualistic mind to the non-dualistic unconscious mind.
So you're speaking mind. There a similar concept to what in Eastern traditions they've regarded as ego death, or transcending the grip of the ego, the control of the ego over the personality. So, Jay, your take on that?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the subconscious, because really doing EFT, I have found things in my subconscious that has just blown me away. And I personally, Mark's natural law talk, just an amazing presentation, and so uplifting. And when you hear truth from ancient philosophers and from people like Mark Passio and John Lamb Lash today, and you hear these spiritual, psychological, metaphysical truths that really basically come down. To me, it all comes down to the golden rule. That's right. Do no harm. And all I can say, and I want to get this point across to as many people as I can, get a notebook and start doing an EFT diary and work with EFT and write notes on what you're tapping on. And you're going to absolutely, if you put the effort forth, transform your consciousness.
Jay, absolutely great answer. Ray, thanks so much for your call. Always a pleasure to hear from you. We're going to come down to the end of the show right now. Jay, I want to thank you so much for being my special guest today. You put out so much great information. Everybody should check out Jay's show on Sunday evening. Jay, you're on from 7 to 9 p.m. East Coast time. Is that correct?
That's right, Mark. Type 1 Radio Ashram.
Right. blogtalkradio.com/Type 1 Radio Ashram. Check it out. It's called SRA today. Jay, you have the floor.
I just want to tell people that, in reality, you can get depressed at the situation that we're in. But I really believe that, especially in America, because of the years of us being told culturally that we're a free people, that when this hard tyranny really gets up in our faces, there's going to be a natural blowback, and people are not going to put up with it. We are not like the Europeans. We are not like the South Americans. We know what it means to be somewhat free. So when they try to put us in a cage and microchip us and X, Y, and Z us, people, I just want to say I don't think it can happen here, because too many people are waking up and taking action against the corruption.
And that's why we have to continuously speak out to others to help wake up even more. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, there's only 2 mistakes that you could ever make on the path to truth: not starting and not going all the way. That's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you here next week.